Chapter 5, The Terrace. It was a Tuesday. Nothing about the morning suggested collapse. Elena woke before the alarm as always. Measured medication. Checked skin. Logged pain levels. Prepared breakfast. Packed the therapy bag. Adrian had mentioned, almost casually the night before, that he missed the almond pastries from Marquez Bakery near the rehabilitation center. They taste like before, he'd said. Before. Before the accident. Before the house changed shape. Before she became essential. So she left early. The bakery was warm and golden inside, the air thick with sugar and yeast. For a brief moment, standing in line, Elena felt almost normal. Just another woman buying breakfast. 2 almond pastries, she said. And coffee. The cashier smiled. Someone's lucky. Elena smiled back automatically. Yes, she thought. Someone is. At San Aurelio Rehabilitation Institute, a volunteer at the front desk glanced up. He's outside on the terrace, she said. It's nice out today. Elena nodded, adjusting the pastry box under her arm. The terrace overlooked a small garden courtyard, benches, trimmed hedges, patients in wheelchairs catching sunlight like fragile plants. She slowed as she approached the glass doors, smoothing her hair with one hand. Then she heard his laugh. It stopped her. Adrian hadn't laughed like that at home in months. It was easy. Full. Alive. She paused just outside the pillar near the entrance, not hiding, just adjusting her grip on the box. Then she heard her name. She's dependable, Adrian said. The other man, a patient she vaguely recognized from physical therapy, chuckled. You're lucky. I am, Adrian replied. I landed well. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. How so? The man asked. Adrian didn't hesitate. Full-time care. No facility costs. No payroll. She does everything. There was pride in his voice. She gave up her program, you know. Whole architecture thing. Didn't even argue. The other man whistled low. That's devotion. Adrian laughed again. It's loyalty. And loyalty is predictable. The pastry box grew heavier in her hands. The man beside him lowered his voice slightly. But what happens long term? Assets and all that? Adrian shifted in his wheelchair. That's handled. Meaning? My estate goes to Camila and Mateo. Blood stays blood. The words landed with surgical precision. And your wife? The man asked. Adrian shrugged. She'll be fine. She's resilient. And honestly, she needs to feel needed. They both laughed. She'd be lost without me, Adrian continued. Some people don't know who they are unless they're saving someone. Silence swallowed the space inside Elena's head. Not shock. Not rage. Something colder. He didn't sound bitter. He didn't sound angry. He sounded amused. That was what hollowed her out. He wasn't grieving when he said it. He wasn't lashing out. He believed it. The pastry box trembled slightly in her hands. 5 years. 5 years of lifting him from bed to chair. 5 years of advocating with insurance agents. 5 years of abandoning drafts, deadlines, conferences. Reduced to predictable, convenient, a solution. The other man spoke again. So you're covered. I locked it down early, Adrian said lightly. You have to be smart. Emotion doesn't protect assets. Emotion doesn't protect assets. Elena inhaled slowly. The scent of almonds and sugar turned nauseating. In that instant, something inside her reorganized. Not shattered, reorganized. She stepped back quietly. He hadn't seen her. She was still invisible, still useful, still predictable. The glass doors reflected her image faintly, small, steady, silent. For a brief second, she considered walking out. Driving home. Confronting him. Throwing the pastry box at his feet. Demanding explanation. But anger is loud. And loud reactions are easy to dismiss. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She listened until he finished. Memorized the tone. Stored the phrases. Then she turned and walked back through the hallway without a sound. Outside, she stopped beside a metal trash bin. She looked at the pastry box one last time. She had woken early for it. Thoughtfully. Lovingly. She dropped it in. The box landed softly among paper cups and napkins. No ceremony. No drama. Just disposal. Her phone buzzed seconds later. Adrian. Where are you? She stared at the screen. Then typed. Car trouble. Running late. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Unbelievable. She locked the phone without replying. For the first time in 5 years, she did not rush back. Instead, she walked to her car and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. Her hands rested calmly on the steering wheel. Her breathing was steady. She expected tears. They didn't come. What she felt instead was clarity. He did not fear losing her. He did not respect her sacrifice. He did not consider her future in his own. He had secured himself. Protected blood. Protected assets. Left her out. Not accidentally. Intentionally. And he believed she would never know. That belief would be his mistake. When she finally returned to the terrace 40 minutes later, she wore her usual expression. Soft. Attentive. Warm. Sorry, she said lightly. The car stalled. Adrian's irritation flickered briefly. Did you bring the pastries? She held his gaze evenly. I forgot. It was the first deliberate lie she had told him in years. He frowned. You forgot? Yes. She adjusted his blanket. Checked his positioning. Smiled at the other man politely. Perfect. Unremarkable. Predictable. But something fundamental had shifted. On the drive home, Adrian scrolled through his phone, unaware. Elena watched the road. 5 years ago, she promised she would never leave. That promise had been born from love. Now, something else was being born. Not revenge. Not yet. Strategy. He thought emotion didn't protect assets. He was right. Emotion doesn't. But information does. And Elena had just gathered her first piece. That night, as she adjusted his pillows, Adrian sighed. You've been quiet. Just tired, she replied. He accepted the answer easily. Because he still believed she was predictable. After he fell asleep, Elena opened her laptop at the kitchen table. Not to cry. Not to grieve. But to search. Estate law. Marital property rights. Financial filings. Quietly. Carefully. The compliant woman had not disappeared. She had evolved. And for the first time in 5 years, Adrian was no longer the only one planning for the future. Chapter 6, The Temperature Drops. The next morning, Elena woke at 4:27 a.m. Her body moved through routine without hesitation. Medication cup. Catheter check. Broth warming on the stove. From the outside, nothing had changed. From the inside, everything had. The grief she expected to feel never arrived. Instead, there was a strange, clean stillness beneath her ribs. Like air after a storm that had never actually broken. Adrian stirred. Morning, he muttered. Morning. Her voice sounded normal. Gentle. Controlled. She helped him sit up, adjusted his back support, lifted him with practiced precision into the wheelchair. Her hands did not tremble. She did not rush. She did not overcompensate with warmth. She simply executed. At breakfast, he scrolled through his phone. "You seemed off yesterday," he said casually. "Just tired." "You forget things when you're tired." She looked at him steadily. "I won't forget again." The words carried a meaning he did not hear. By noon, she had cleaned the bathroom rails, reordered medical supplies, and scheduled his neurologist appointment. Then she sat at the dining table with her laptop open. Not sketches this time. Records. She began with their joint accounts. It took less than 10 minutes to notice the pattern. Transfers. Small at first. Then larger. Funds moved into an account under Adrian's sole name, the one he'd justified as medical security. She opened archived emails. Insurance policies. Retirement accounts. There it was. Beneficiaries, Camila Navarro. Mateo Navarro. No mention of Elena Vargas Navarro. Her name appeared nowhere in future distributions. Nowhere in asset protection clauses. Nowhere in contingency planning. She leaned back slowly. He hadn't forgotten her. He had removed her. Legally. Deliberately. And he had done it early, likely within months of returning home. Before she'd even adjusted to lifting him without injuring her spine. Before she'd withdrawn from graduate school. Before she'd sold her car. Emotion doesn't protect assets. She closed her eyes briefly. No tears. Just confirmation. When Adrian returned from physical therapy that afternoon, he was irritated. "They're cutting my session time next month," he said sharply. "Insurance limits. I'll call them. You should have anticipated this." There it was again. The assumption that she existed to buffer inconvenience. "I'll handle it," she replied evenly. He watched her for a moment. "You're quiet." "I'm listening." He seemed satisfied with that. Listening. Yes. She was. More carefully than ever before. Over the next week, Elena adjusted her behavior in ways so subtle they bordered on invisible. She stopped volunteering information about her day. Stopped filling silences with reassurance. Stopped offering emotional cushioning after his complaints. She responded. She did not absorb. When he snapped, she did not defend. When he criticized, she did not internalize. She observed. He noticed something was different, but couldn't name it. "You don't laugh much anymore," he said one evening. She tilted her head slightly. "I'm tired." "You're always tired." "Yes." There was no apology attached to it this time. That Friday, Camila visited. She breezed in wearing expensive perfume and impatience. "Dad, did you sign the property tax form?" she asked, barely glancing at Elena. "It's in the office," Adrian replied. Camila turned to Elena. "Can you grab it?" "Not please." "Not would you mind." "Just an assumption." Elena held her gaze calmly. "It's in the left drawer." Camila blinked. "Oh." She went to retrieve it herself. It was a small thing. So small no one commented. But something had shifted. Elena was no longer reflexively compliant. Camila noticed. Adrian noticed. Neither understood why. Later that night, after Camila left, Adrian frowned. "You could be a little warmer." Elena looked up from the kitchen sink. "I was polite." "You seemed distant." She dried her hand slowly. "Did I?" He studied her. "I don't like when you pull away." The sentence hung there. Not as concern. As warning. Pulling away threatened the architecture he'd built. She walked closer. Placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. "I'm here," she said. It was true. She was. Just not in the same way. 3 days later, she found the final piece. While organizing paperwork in the office. A task Adrian had once managed, she discovered a folder labeled long-term planning. Inside, a draft will. Dated 4 years ago. Signed. Witnessed. Her name appeared exactly once. Spouse, Elena Vargas Navarro. Under inheritance, none. Instead, there was a clause. Spouse is assumed financially stable and not dependent upon estate assets. Elena read the line twice. Financially stable. She had no independent income. No active career. No separate retirement. Because she had given those up to care for him. He had written her independence into existence, legally, while ensuring she had none. The brilliance of it almost impressed her. Almost. She placed the document back precisely where she found it. No disturbance. No evidence. Then she went into the bedroom. Adrian was watching television. "Did you find the heating pad?" he asked. "Yes." She handed it to him. He didn't look up. "Good." She watched him for a moment. This man. This body she lifted daily. This voice she defended to doctors and relatives. He believed she needed him more than he needed her. That belief was the foundation of his security. And foundations, she knew from architecture, are everything. Crack the foundation, and the structure shifts. Not instantly. But inevitably. That night, after Adrian fell asleep, Elena sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. She opened a new document on her laptop. Not legal research. Not finances. A list. Separate account. Independent credit line. Legal consultation. Copy all documents. Do not react emotionally. She stared at the final line for a long time. Do not react emotionally. He believed she was driven by devotion. He believed she would explode if betrayed. He believed she was predictable. He was wrong. Emotion does not protect assets. But patience dismantles empires. She closed the laptop. For the first time in years, she slept deeply. Not because she felt safe. But because she had direction. And direction is a form of power. Chapter 7, The First Move. Elena did not call a lawyer immediately. Impulses were dangerous. Emotion was detectable. Instead, she waited. 2 weeks. 14 days of routine so flawless Adrian relaxed again. She woke at 4:27 a.m. Prepared medication. Scheduled appointments. Handled insurance disputes. She smiled when appropriate. Touched his shoulder when expected. Listened when he complained. Predictable. That word had once felt insulting. Now it felt useful. The opportunity came on a Thursday. Adrian had a 3-hour extended physical therapy session followed by a consultation with a mobility specialist. The appointments rarely ran short. Elena dropped him off, waited until he was inside, then drove, not home, but downtown. Her pulse remained steady. She had rehearsed this. The building was modest. Brick exterior. Brass lettering beside the door. Holloway and Price, Estate and Family Law. She had chosen the firm carefully. Not flashy. Not aggressive in advertising. Established. Quiet reputation. Inside, the waiting area smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. A receptionist looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes." Elena Vargas. The name felt foreign in this context. Not caregiver. Not wife. Just Elena. She was led into a small office lined with law books. A woman in her late 40s stood to greet her. Naomi Holloway. Her handshake was firm. Assessing. Elena sat. For a moment, she considered softening the story, presenting confusion instead of strategy. She didn't. My husband rewrote his estate 4 years ago, she began evenly. I am excluded. Naomi did not react. That is legal, she said calmly. Depending on jurisdiction, spouses can still contest. He moved joint funds into accounts solely under his name. Also legal in some cases. He listed me as financially independent in a clause. Naomi's pen paused slightly. Are you financially independent? No. How long have you been out of the workforce? 5 years. I left graduate school to become his full-time caregiver after a spinal injury. Now Naomi leaned back. And is there compensation? No. Silence stretched. Naomi folded her hands. Do you intend to leave the marriage? Elena did not hesitate. Yes. The word did not shake. Naomi studied her for several seconds. Do you intend to confront him? No. A small shift in the lawyer's expression, approval. Good, Naomi said. Why? Because confrontation gives warning. Warning allows preparation. Preparation protects assets. Elena held her gaze. Emotion does not protect assets. But strategy does. For the next 40 minutes, Naomi asked precise questions. Bank statements. Property titles. Insurance beneficiaries. Medical power of attorney. Elena answered everything. She had memorized dates. Amounts. Transfers. Naomi eventually closed her folder. You have grounds, she said. For what? Financial misrepresentation at minimum. Potential marital asset concealment. Possibly coercive dependency. The last phrase landed quietly. Coercive dependency. It sounded clinical. Measured. Accurate. Naomi continued. However, if you leave abruptly without documentation, he controls the narrative. As a disabled spouse, he will garner sympathy. Elena nodded. I know. Then you do nothing emotionally. You gather evidence. You establish financial independence quietly. You allow him to continue believing he is secure. A slow exhale left Elena's lungs. Yes. Naomi leaned forward slightly. Understand something. Men who build control through dependency rarely see dismantling coming. Their greatest weakness is certainty. Elena almost smiled. Adrian was very certain. When she returned to the rehabilitation center, Adrian was waiting near the entrance. You're late, he said immediately. Traffic, she almost said. Instead, parking was difficult. He frowned but accepted it. On the drive home, he complained about reduced therapy coverage. They're cutting hours because they assume you can handle more at home. I can, she replied calmly. You shouldn't have to. The irony almost made her laugh. But she didn't. That evening, after dinner, Adrian asked casually, Did you pay the utilities? Yes. From which account? She met his eyes evenly. The household one. He watched her for a beat too long. Good. There it was. The beginning of suspicion. Control senses change. It just doesn't know where to look yet. Over the next month, Elena followed Naomi's instructions with surgical precision. She opened a separate bank account in her maiden name. Small transfers at first, grocery cash rounded upward, reimbursement deposits redirected. Nothing dramatic. Nothing traceable as intent. She applied for a remote drafting contract through an old academic contact. 2 projects. Modest pay. But income. She copied every financial document in the house. Scanned wills. Insurance forms. Retirement accounts. Stored them on an encrypted drive Naomi provided. At night, she resumed caregiving without flaw. If anything, she became better. More efficient. More composed. Adrian relaxed. He mistook calm for surrender. One evening, as she adjusted his blanket, he studied her. "You've been different lately." She tilted her head. "How?" "Less emotional." She considered that. "I'm adapting." He seemed satisfied with that answer. Adaptation was a word he understood. It implied endurance. Not exit. 3 weeks after her first meeting with Naomi, Elena received an email confirmation. Her new account balance, $3,280. It wasn't much. But it was hers. For the first time in 5 years, she possessed money he did not authorize. She stared at the number for a long time. Freedom rarely begins loudly. It begins in small, almost invisible increments. That night, Adrian scrolled through his phone while she folded laundry. "You know," he said casually, "Matteo mentioned something interesting." She didn't look up. "What?" "He said spouses sometimes try to leverage disability in divorce cases." The words floated lightly. "Testing." She folded another shirt. "Do they?" "Apparently." Silence stretched. Then she asked, evenly, "Why would they?" He watched her closely. "People get resentful." She met his gaze calmly. "Resentment requires surprise." He held her stare. For a brief second, something flickered behind his eyes. Uncertainty. Then it was gone. He nodded slowly. "True." But that night, he stayed awake longer than usual. And Elena knew. The dismantling had begun. Chapter 8, The Performance. Adrian began asking questions he had never asked before. Not directly. Never directly. "Did you send the insurance appeal?" "Yes." "Let me see the confirmation email." That was new. Elena handed him her phone without hesitation. He scanned. Returned it. Said nothing. But he was watching now. Control does not disappear quietly. It reasserts itself. 2 days later, he asked for access to the household account statements. "You always handle it," he said lightly. "But I should probably start reviewing things again." Elena nodded. "That makes sense." She printed the statements before he could log in himself. Careful selection. Nothing altered. Nothing obvious. Small transfers had already been accounted for through adjusted expense entries. Groceries slightly higher. Medical supplies rounded up. Transportation variance. She had learned something during 5 years of caregiving. No one questions numbers that look boring. He reviewed them at the dining table. Wheelchair angled slightly away from her. Silence thick in the room. "You've been very organized," he said finally. "I had to be." A pause. "You're not overwhelmed?" "No." He looked disappointed by that. Later that week, he requested something stranger. "I'd like to attend the next meeting with the financial planner." Elena's hand stilled briefly on the kitchen counter. The planner had been Adrian's territory for years. He rarely invited her. "Of course," she said. He studied her face. Searching. For resistance. For anxiety. For anything. She offered none. The appointment was on a Tuesday afternoon. The office overlooked the city skyline, glass, chrome, calculated success. The financial planner, Mr. Alvarez, greeted them warmly. "Adrian, good to see you." "Elena." He seemed mildly surprised she had come. Adrian wheeled himself to the head of the table. Elena sat beside him. Not behind. Beside. A subtle repositioning. Adrian noticed. His jaw tightened briefly. Mr. Alvarez began discussing portfolio shifts. Long-term investments. Trust allocations. Then Adrian interrupted. I'd like to revisit beneficiary designations. The air shifted. Mr. Alvarez blinked. We reviewed those last year. I know. He glanced at Elena. Circumstances change. Elena held his gaze evenly. Yes, she said softly. They do. Mr. Alvarez looked between them. Are you considering amendments? Adrian leaned back. Possibly. Elena spoke before silence thickened. Could you walk us through what amendments would require? Us. She watched the word land. Adrian's fingers tightened slightly on the wheel rim. Mr. Alvarez hesitated. Well, both parties would need to acknowledge revisions if assets are jointly held. Jointly, Elena repeated calmly. Yes. Adrian gave a short nod. We'll schedule a follow-up. Meeting over. In the car ride home, silence pressed against the windows. Finally, Adrian spoke. You seemed very interested. In our finances? Yes. They affect my life. He exhaled slowly. Everything I built was to protect us. Elena turned her head slightly. Was it? The question was gentle. Almost curious. But it lingered. He did not answer. That night, he didn't sleep. She could tell by the way he shifted. By the way his breathing remained shallow. At 2:13 a.m., he said into the dark. You'd tell me if you were unhappy. It wasn't a question. Elena stared at the ceiling. I adapted, she said quietly. He turned his head toward her. That's not what I asked. She finally looked at him. Are you asking because you care, or because you're calculating? Silence detonated between them. For a moment, she thought he might explode. Instead, he smiled. A thin, careful smile. You've changed. Yes, she said. I have. The next morning, he called Mateo. She overheard fragments from the hallway. Just making sure. She's been different. No, not accusing. Just precaution. Precaution. He was beginning to fortify. Which meant he sensed movement. But he still didn't know direction. 3 days later, Camila arrived unannounced. I was in the area, she said lightly. She wasn't. Elena knew that. Camila moved through the house like an inspector. Commented on organization. On medication placement. On Adrian's posture. You look thinner, she told her brother. I'm fine, he replied. Camila turned to Elena. You're sure you're managing properly? Elena smiled. I always have. Camila's eyes sharpened slightly. Yes, she said. You have. The tension was polite. Civil. Predatory. That evening, Adrian requested something new. From now on, I'd like to handle online banking personally. There it was. A line drawn. Elena nodded. Okay. No argument. No defense. He blinked, almost thrown by the lack of resistance. I just think it's time I re-engage. Good, she replied calmly. You should. He studied her face again. Looking for panic. For desperation. For loss. She gave him serenity. And serenity is the most unsettling response to suspicion. After he fell asleep, Elena sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. Her separate account now held $5,940. 2 more freelance contracts secured. Naomi had emailed earlier. Documentation strong. Continue routine. Do not escalate. Elena closed the laptop. 5 years ago, she would have cried at this point. Felt betrayed. Felt frightened. Now she felt something else. Control. Not over him. Over herself. In the bedroom, Adrian shifted again. Restless. The certainty that once fueled him was eroding. He couldn't name why. He couldn't point to evidence. But instinct whispered. And instinct is often correct. He was losing something. He just didn't know what yet.